Okay. Now, moving on, Mr. Peters, to another issue, which is, your List MP Mark Patterson's private member's bill that proposes to raise the minimum residency qualification for New Zealand Super from 10 years to 20 years, above the age of 20. So, we have an economist by the name of Harshal Chittile, and he has asked us to ask you three questions, on this member's bill.
Yes.
He says that when Stephen Joyce presented a paper to the cabinet and made projections, he said that the Crown would be saving only $39 million by 2030 and $195 million by 2041 if there were changes made to the way we administer New Zealand Super now. Now, if putting this in context, the gross cost of New Zealand Super itself is $14.6 billion. Okay, which was in 2019 last year. So with 14.6 billion, 195 million is just a drop in the ocean. Now, the three questions that we would like to ask you, and we'll go one by one. Why is this the preferred option of using 20 years instead of some other options, which is like raising the age from 65 to 67, for example, or quite a few other options were put on the table? So that's the first question. And
I can answer that for a start.
Yeah.
First of all, Mr. Stephen Joyce's predictions are rubbish. And I'll tell you why they're rubbish. Because we've allowed over 90,000 people in the last few years, 90,000 people to come to this country and obtain full super after 10 years, whether they've paid any tax or made any contribution to our economy or not. And you cannot find anywhere in the world, any other country that allows that to happen.
Okay.
Second thing is, when I put the legislation up, and I got only beaten by one vote in each case, one vote in each case, one vote in each case, one vote in each case. When I put the legislation up to raise the qualifying time, the National Party said it wasn't constitutionally sound and that it was against the Bill of Rights. And then the last election, they campaigned on it themselves. They campaigned on exactly what I'd said.
Right. I consider a point. I think you have a point there. We're talking about someone who has been here for 10 years. Now, let's go to the other point in the proposed bill, which is the countries which are exempted because of reciprocal arrangements. Now, so if someone from the UK were to go back to the UK and stay there for, say, 5 years, it would be considered as time spent in New Zealand. Now, how does that contribute to the New Zealand superannuation revenues?
No, if they go for a certain time and back to the UK, and that if they don't rack up at least 20 years in my country, then they won't be getting super at the full amount.
Oh, is that so? Okay.
In the future.
Oh, okay. So that's my mistake, because we assume that anyone who goes overseas.
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
All right.
No.
Okay. So,
see, my point is, and when that economist says, why not put the age up to 67? Well, I'll tell you why. Because a lot of people who are in physical jobs, their bodies can't handle it.
That's right.
They are spent force by the time they're 60 in some cases. And what we're saying is, well, because of this highly generous policy to people who get it after 10 years, we should kick the age up to 67. That might be the National Party's policy, and it was other parties' policies as well. But one party has been holding out against it because we can afford super if it is fair and handled properly.
I mean, again, considering that point, in France they tried the same thing, and there's been agitations going on for months now, increasing in the age of superannuation. Now, and the final question was, is there a proposal, for example, if someone does not complete 20 years, say they have been here 19 years, and or maybe one day less than 20 years. Is it possible for them to have some sort of a proportional super payment? So they don't get the full amount, but they get only for the number of years that they have stayed here. So let's say we start with 10. So if you start with 10, you get half the super or something like that. And if you stay here for 20 years, then you get the full. Is that a proposal? Do you think that's a good idea? Is that a viable idea?
It's viable. It's a sound idea, and that's what the idea says.
Okay.
That it'll be pro-rata. You'll get it full at 20 years, but if you've got 19 or 18, well, it'll be pro-rata down for the years you've spent.
I see.
Because if you're retiring at 65 years of age, and you spent only 10 of those 45 years after you left school or university, you spent only 10 of your 45 years in New Zealand's economy, surely you don't expect to get the full qualification of somebody who spent 45 years.
That's
including
right.
the New Zealand economy.
And that's fair, yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair. Well, thank you so much, Deputy Prime Minister, for answering all those questions and
Well,
for being
thank you
forthright
very
as
much.
usual. And we enjoyed talking to you, and we look forward to seeing you on the show again.